grab hold of your flies. This is a podcast for nymphers, strippers, swingers, and dry fly guys. It's the show that brings you stories, instruction, and conservation from three guys who live it every day. This is the Open Fly.
Show 3.
I didn't think we'd make it this
We
far.
did it. It's the milestone. I think that means we're in our third trimester.
Third time's a charm.
Crowning. Yeah, we're crowning.
Trifecta.
Yeah. If our listeners have any other ones to throw in there, it'll be too late. We don't care.
But still, contact us with your comments.
Yeah.
Tell us about number 3 during number 4.
Nobody cares.
That hurts.
So, show number 3 today is the Stream Access show. We're going to hit it from a few different angles. We're going to talk to Gregg Martin, who has spinal cord injuries and is getting to the water in a custom chair. And then we're also going to talk to the Utah Stream Access Coalition to talk about some legislation that's going on and has happened that is limiting their access to their public resource due to private interests. And we're going to talk about how people outside of Utah need to pay attention to what's going on because it can happen in your own backyard. And then we also have on the guide stories today, Koz. That's what he's known as.
If you know him as Koz.
Say his name because I'm going to butcher it.
Brian Kozminski.
That's it. See?
Cause from Gobbler's Knob.
On the nose.
Mm-hmm. The mitten.
That will mean something later.
You will need both hands for this podcast.
Both sides of both hands.
And also, that will make more sense later. Okay, so without further ado,
Easy for you to say.
it is very easy. Without further ado, we're going to move on to our listener feedback, where you send us your questions and comments and other things we don't care about. Kirk, take it away.
Once again, we hear from Bud Alcock.
That's the second time.
I know. We should send this guy something.
He's
just
doubled up on us.
That or we're going to have to start blocking him. I'm not sure which. No, Bud's a good guy. He says, I'm lucky enough to be semi-retired, but I'm involved in the fishing industry because my first post-retirement job at the local home hardware store where I was placed in charge of the fishing section. I could not believe the number of people that came in that were ignorant of the regulations. I believe that an emphasis on adherence to regulations for each and every region that a person may fish may be a good focus too.
It very well could. It's definitely not out of the question as far as show themes. It is a big issue, and Derek and I have talked about this before the podcast was even an issue. Just in our state, you can buy a license that allows you to fish over fish that are listed under the Endangered Species Act, and a lot of those people that are buying those licenses and fishing over those fish don't know the first thing about the rules, fish identification, fish handling, or anything of that nature. And it's kind of become something that's we've been trying to bring to the public light. And so, yeah, we agree. There's definitely more issues than just the ones going on in Washington that I'm aware of. I'm sure if listeners want to send us a message, let us know if there's an issue in their area that they're concerned about when it comes to that. We could try to build a show out of that in the future. What do you guys think?
Yeah, well, I think that you have to take a hunter education class to be able to get a hunting license in the state of Washington. Should be the same requirement for fishing.
I don't disagree. A lot of people do. A lot of people think that's kind of a ridiculous idea. I don't. I think when you're going to use a public resource and your impact can have an effect on other people's use of that resource, I don't see a reason why that can't be a thing, especially when there's out west where there's endangered species involved. So, Derek?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's about access, and if you're using it, you got to use it responsibly. So, to keep that access, it's not just they're not independent of each other.
This is a topic that could be its own show, so we can stop it there and just let you know that we're on the same page. We haven't booked that show yet, but it's not out of the question. It is on the queue, I guess.
Next comment comes from Edelbert Houston from Holland. Greeting. I am Edelbert from Netherlands and a keen angler of fishes to include trouts and cod and mackerel. I was happy to be listening to your podcast last recently when one of your staffs declared to be displeased with Dutch persons.
Womp womp.
We in Netherlands always welcome with arms open the American peoples, and so it is not clear why why the citizen of the Netherlands would be so much hated. We are a kind people and should not be judged until you have walked a kilometer in our wooden shoes. Thank you for your acceptance.
Had we known that people in Netherlands would be listening to the show, it's a good lesson to learn because people could be anywhere. So,
well, I think it's in response to my Austin Powers reference on show 2 about hating the Dutch, which I don't. I didn't realize that it would, bring such heated comments from people in Holland.
All one of them. He's outraged.
Anyway.
That sounds like you need a good PR person, Kirk.
Yeah. Actually, there is no Adelbert Houston from Holland.
Truth comes out.
Yeah, that was me.
He wrote a message to himself.
Well, it's my way of publicly apologizing to the country of the Netherlands.
By making a caricature of a Dutch person. Yeah, that'll go real well.
I have a very good friend who's Dutch.
I have a friend that's Dutch. It's okay.
Yes.
It's okay to make a joke like this because I have friends that are Dutch.
Yes. That reasoning always works in every situation.
Anita writes, "Good morning. I am Anita. Please don't be offended by contacting you in this manner.
I am.
I want us to discuss something very important that would benefit both of us. I will be very glad if partner with me and profit from this business deal. Regards, Anita."
So she's wanting to send us money.
I bet she ties flies.
It's unclear.
She didn't leave a call to action, or I'd be willing to send her a money order if that means that would get her the ability to wire bank funds to us.
Yeah, maybe send the OpenFly corporate credit card number to her.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what she was getting at.
Okay.
Seems legit.
Consider it done then.
Yeah,
Anita, thanks.
We can't turn down free money.
Yeah, thank you, Anita, for contacting us here at the OpenFly.
We appreciate it.
And the last comment comes from Dick Fondon. Good job on your first podcast. It was fun. This is a busy time of the year for fly fishing expos and shows. As a service to your listeners, please consider spending a minute or two naming the location and the dates of the fly fishing shows that will come up in the next couple of weeks. Thank you, Dick.
Yeah, about that. So, I know it's going to ruin some of the radio magic here, but these shows aren't always going to post when they're recorded. This show in particular is recorded about a week before it's going to post. So between the time that this is recorded and the time that you hear this, I will have gone from the OpenFly studios and flown across the country, gone to one of these shows, and come back. Therefore, it's just not I wouldn't really be that effective. This show is going to be downloadable for years to come. Somebody downloading it 2 and 3 years from now, they're going to hear about, we're going to tell them that, yes, there's a show coming up in 2 weeks. That's just, it's going to be longer than a minute, I can tell you that much, just because there's so many of them. And they're very easily searched online if anybody's interested in going. I mean, we can say right now there's a lot of these available to go to. You can go online and Google these types of shows in your area. I for one, would benefit from telling people to go to them because I'm at a lot of them representing my company and selling products, but it's just not information that's really always relevant.
Yeah, use a phone book.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
I think the nice thing about that, though, is that it is actually the day before my birthday, so next week when people are listening to this, they've missed it, so they can send stuff to us.
Wow. Yeah. We're like getting into the concept of time travel.
Yeah. I didn't want to bring it up right away because we've already talked about, Sasquatches and et cetera, so we don't want to go that way.
No, but, we're so yeah, to finish up your question, it's only relevant within the first couple days that the show would be downloaded, which is not going to be the majority of the time it's downloaded. It's going to be downloaded over the years. And another is it's getting onto a slippery slope when we start taking on sponsors and advertisers. Most of these events are for-profit events, and it's essentially giving free advertising, while others are paying for it, and it's just it starts to get political and boring, and that's we're just trying to avoid those types of situations. But they're very easily searched out, so we recommend that if anybody wants to go to these events, search ones in your area, and there will be very easy to find listings for them.
I think also as well, it puts a little strain on us because now you're asking us to be relevant now as well as last week. That could be tough.
Yeah.
I'll get my flux capacitor pulsing.
All right. Are there any other feedbacks or questions?
No. And that is a call to action. Contact us. Send us your comments. We're lonely.
How can they go about doing that?
Well, they can go to www.theopenflypodcast.com. We have a contact tab. Go there, or you can also email us directly using our email account, theopenflypodcast@gmail.com.
You can also send us messages on Facebook, and you can leave comments on the show postings on the website. So
Hashtag Twitter.
that too. So anything that goes to any of those places can and will be read on the air. Usually.
Yeah, we reserve the right not to read everything.
But we haven't yet. I think we've pretty much read everything.
That's because we're desperate for content.
We are.
And we're reserving the right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's moving on to our donation segment. Every month, we will be raffling off a product donated by one of our sponsors, and how you can enter that raffle is to go to our website at www.theopenflypodcast.com and click on the donate button where you can donate $3, $5, and $10 to enter into the raffle, and the number of times you are entered is related to the amount that you donate. So the more you donate, the more you are entered. And you will get some cool stickers in the mail brought to you by Kirk. Kirk designed them.
Yes.
They're nice.
They're very sweet.
And hopefully they'll be showing up today, aka a week ago, and will be on the way to those of you that have already started donating. And for that, we thank you. There's a lot more of you than we anticipated, and that's just been awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, we do. All right. Is there anything else you guys wanted to banter about before we go into our first break?
Oh, is this are we paid for this break? Is it a state-sanctioned coffee break? Or
Sure.
because if we're not getting paid for the break, let's just stay on the air.
Oh,
That increases productivity.
It does.
I got nothing. All right, we're going to go to our first break here. This is the Open Fly Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and online at www.theopenflypodcast.com. And we'll be right back.
Now back to the Open Fly.
All right, we have on the line with us Gregg Martin. Go ahead and tell our listeners your story about how your accessibility to the water is going for you.
What happened was, in 1985, my back was broken at the T7, T8, that's thoracic 7, thoracic 8 level, and I lost my feeling just below my pectoral muscles. And I did that. I fell from a rope hanging a parachute up to dry as a smoke jumper, and I had fly fished before that, actually ever since I was 12, but I integrated it with conventional tackle. But oddly, after I was injured, I embraced fly fishing in totality, and if it had something to do with being whacked out for a while, I have no clue. And since then, I decided I'm going to fly fish, and I'm going to go where everyone else can go.
And you're not doing that on foot, right? You're you had a custom built piece of machinery. Tell us about
what it is. What I managed to do initially, I used a regular standard lightweight and went with my family, and it was really frustrating. The terrain is not outdoor terrain is not made for regular wheelchairs. What you absolutely need to do is raise the little tires. They're called casters. And I don't mean to offend anybody's intelligence. That's what they're called. So you need to raise them up. And so all my chair, it is custom, but what it is actually is just an A-frame that attaches to a regular lightweight chair with a big round ball about 3 feet in front that lifts the casters up about 3 inches. If they were actually gone, my access would be much greater because 3 inches isn't a lot, and they still dig into soft soil, large rocks, and this and that. But then again, if the ball was to break, I'd have no way to get out of a problem if I was there by myself, which I usually am.
So you're accessing streams without the assistance of a fishing partner, it sounds like, a lot of the times.
Oh, exactly. I had a partner for a very long time, but I really didn't need his help as much as you might think, and I've always been one for solitude. And even despite the condition, I hear Cardor in some of my favorite streams, and my heart beats really fast. So that's just me. That's not everybody. It's not a real social thing for me. Right. It's more so.
So you're not just getting Usually you'll sometimes see wheelchair accessed or somebody accessed by a wheelchair, just like the boat launch. You're not just going into the boat launches. You're getting into some little more rough terrain. It sounds like.
I do try to go. Actually, what we have near where I live in Boise are 2 outstanding tailwaters and many freestone streams. A little farther away is, of course, the famous Silver Creek and its tributaries. Farther north is the Salmon River, and that's about the reach of my range. Every other day I have to be back for personal care. So, and that's something I'd like to touch upon real quickly is that I'm dealing with spinal cord injury here, but there's other maladies, disabilities that people deal with, and so their situation is going to be different. So what we're talking about is how I've managed to do things here. Mm-hmm. I do go to, I fish trout since 1985 to 2005 religiously. In my salad days, when I was, say, 35 to 40, I was doing 70 trips a year. And in my case, I start early and still do. What you're going to find out is that where you can go, anybody can go. And oftentimes you're relegated to what I call spots, and that can even be in a quote sort of thing. If it's a stream, it might be a spot that has fish that it might be better 15 feet away upstream or 15 feet, 30, 50 feet down, but you just can't get there. It's too steep. The cobble's too tall. It might be too soft. So you fish spots, and that's both a curse and a blessing. The curse is that you got to be there before someone else is, and the blessing is that you learn that if you're in a spot, you have to be adaptable. And I myself carry 2 rods. They're often different weights and they're rigged different ways. And if fish are rising, if they're on emergers, if I nip, I'm ready to do it all depending on light conditions, the wind, whatever. And I ensure that I can get back to the vehicle for water and lunch and whatnot if I have to. And that's generally how I do it. I aid my access. I carry pruners, both two-handed and one-hand pruners, to clear back cast space if need be, or to untangle flies I snag, that sort of thing. And lately, my passion has been carp, so it's mostly still waters. A government issue weed whacker, which simply chops down bulrushes, cattails, tumbleweeds, that sort of thing that blocks my access. So you really got to want to do it in my fashion. So you can take it as far as you want to, just like any sort of fly fishing.
So at least you've got plenty of public access. Whether or not physically it's easy for you to reach a particular spot.
So I'll just say this, is that I'm going to assume that someone wants to get out and hasn't and they're in a chair, that they have legal access, whether it's they've got permission on private land or it's public, whatever, that wherever you are, I'm assuming you have public access.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't usually an issue for you. Yeah, I mean, the waters that you like to fish, you can...
Right. It isn't an issue. What is more of an issue for me is the physical situation. Like I said, with the chair I use in particular, it can often be too steep. And I've tumbled in the water. I tried to count the last several nights trying to prepare for this podcast, I think 7 times since 1985, and only once, and that was on the North Platte in Wyoming. I slid off a beaver dam in really deep water. Only once has it been over my head. And I actually pulled the chair out beneath me, to the bank from the shore. That was a booger. The other times I got wet, but I was able to right myself and get back on the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So and that leads me also to, you should be prepared for that, especially if you're fishing solo. And a level of fitness is absolutely required. And that just carried on from my lifestyle in the past anyway. So,
yeah. A little bit of a unusual question, I guess, is on the wheels on your apparatus. Are you using a treaded rubber tire like a bike? Is
like
it
knobby tires?
Knobby tires? Is it something? Is it like do you have invasive species issues? Do you have like felt on your tires or something?
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. What this is, it actually was my very first wheelchair of all, that long ago in 1985, and it's got 2.5-inch mountain bike tires on it with knobs, and that's part of the access that I forgot about. It's got that detachable, doesn't detach anymore. It's no longer made, so it's kind of jury-rigged. It's got that A-frame with a ball that lifts the casters up about 3 inches. And the problem with the knobby tires, one might find out if they go that way, if they go that means, is that clothing, both your pants and your vest, if you wear a vest, your shirts, absolutely, especially in the winter clothing, will be torn apart by the sand and gravel and mud and whatnot you pick up with the tires. So my clothing's altered. It's expensive, but everything's high and above the tires, and I ensure my vests are, that sort of thing. And as far as carrying gear, everyone's different, and it's hard to imagine perhaps, but I always carry 2 rods, and I tuck them down between my legs and zip them up under the vest or coat or whatever, or both. And so they stick out that way. And then I've got a net that is extendable to 115 inches. And that's a huge part of my access that I stick out on the ball, and it just rides next to the rods. It's hard to imagine without a picture. But
yeah, is that a custom net, or do you buy it extendable? Like I have an extendable net myself, but it's not nowhere near that.
Yeah, this is, and I can name names. This is from the Fly Shop in Reading. It's a Magnum. It's a Ranger model, I believe, and it's just one that it's got a rubberized. I think it's 21 by 24 inches with a large drooping rubber net, and I essentially bought it for carp. But I can reach down 5 feet below me. It's not easy to bring a 10-pound fish up. Now I'm talking carp now.
Yeah.
But I can do it. You know, I got to be careful. I don't want to topple over some of these still waters. But part of my access is that net, and that is very important. Very, very important.
Great.
It's like an opposite of a Skagit line. It's a Skagit net.
Yeah, just yeah. So, and I've doing a little more research about you too. It seems like you've become a hell of a tyer too, and seem to have your pro staffing with a fly company and have your own patterns out there. And tell us a little bit about some of the carp patterns that you've tied.
Well, I'm a fly designer for Catch out of Billings, Montana, and that was just by recommendation of a friend. We saw some of the flies on a blog. I don't have a blog. I've guessed one on USCarp.net. But anyway, tell us about some of them. If I was to choose one fly for my carp that I throw 99, actually probably 99% of the time, it'd be an egg. It'd just be an egg.
Just
However,
like a glow bug, or?
I never learned to tie the simplest fly on earth, so mine are spun and packed.
Okay.
Believe it or not, they're spun and they're packed, and I can model the colors and I can use wools other than glow bug yarn and that sort of thing.
So are you doing these in the bright colors or more subdued, natural drabs?
Well, too bright I don't like, and I don't care for the orange tones, more yellowish, and in the fall, for whatever odd reason, white is just a go-to killer.
Yeah.
But I do carry all the iconic patterns, and some I've developed myself. If someone wants to see carp flies, just so I can show them, I rarely use them. The waters I fish, I usually have fish close. They're very shallow. They're spooky, and the sink rate and the light landing of an egg just is perfect. It's just perfect.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody else do anything like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it really does work. It works.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, is there anything else you guys wanted to ask, or Greg, that you wanted to add to your story here? But I think we've kind of covered what you're doing, and I think it's just awesome that you're out there doing what you're doing. It's not something you hear about very often.
Yeah, and as far as the official handicap spots, they're often docks with a railing, as if you wanted to actually commit suicide or something, but you can't fly fish over those things.
Right.
So I avoid them like the plague. I much prefer to go to my spots, if indeed it is a spot, and fish that way. I've also found out that I do like my solitude, so that's one thing that led me to carp. In any tailwater, USA, there's going to be people. I don't care where you are, there just is. And like I said before, if you can go, they can go. The average able-bodied person can go. So about the time I started to catch carp accidentally and had a ball, I read the also iconic Carp on the Fly by Reynolds, Bafus, and Berryman, and scouted some waters, found some carp, began to catch them, and it's essentially gone downhill from there as far as that goes. So fish for alternate species. You might find access easier if you're after bluegill and bass and carp and sort of native fishes that other people don't fish for. And during the off season, I find solitude in my trout waters in the winter. Now, you have to dress for that. I've lost the feeling, as I said, below my chest, and I frostbit myself and didn't know it. I've also broke my leg twice going through the brush and didn't know it until the next day. But you have to be cognizant of these things. Everyone says, well, you really should have someone with you. Well, I don't have a partner. I have my grandkids now, thank goodness, because my boys are grown and they're busy and they have their own lives, and they do fly fish, and their favorite fish are carp, despite the hundreds of trips we've gone after trout. But I'm willing to go alone and do it like I like. Not everyone might have the desire to put the effort that I do into it. But if you do, there's stuff out there. I was going to try to name drop chairs, but when I got online, so much has changed. I would recommend someone just images of outdoor wheelchairs, and they'll find things, whether they're motorized or non, that would help them greatly, I'm sure. And I would only hope that their insurance can help them, just that, simply that.
Cool. All right. Well, Greg, thanks so much for coming on. It's been great to hear your story, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to you again soon sometime.
Wonderful, Evan. Wonderful.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Greg.
Take care.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Jeff.
Cool.
Goodbye.
All right. So that wraps that up. We're going to go to a break here. This is the Open Fly Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and online at www.theopenflypodcast.com. And we'll be right back.
Now back to the Open Fly.
All right, and we are back with the guide stories. Derek is going to be interviewing Brian Kozminski. I don't know. You say it.
Well, you might know that name, but you'd recognize him as Koz if you actually knew him. Morning, Koz.
Good morning.
Is it flip-flop weather there for you today in Michigan, or what's going on?
We've got a little bit of a bluebird sunny day in northern Michigan, but we've got almost 30 to 40 inches of white stuff on the ground. So it's been a long, cold winter, and we're looking at a balmy 8 degrees out right now.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's a dry 8, though.
Right, we're lacking the humidity. It's only at 78% right about now.
Kirk, introduce yourself to Brian.
Hey, Koz, it's Kirk.
Good to hear your voice, sir.
You as well? You're much taller than I thought you'd be.
You sound much taller, yes. Exactly. We got to go right to the height jokes.
Hi. This is Evan.
Evan, good to talk to you. How are you?
I'm grand today. Grand.
Right on.
Okay.
Koz, first thing I want to do is say happy birthday to you. We share one of those things in common is our birthday, so happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. I'm guessing you're 29 as well.
Yep.
I actually
It's kind
am.
of hard to believe we've been fishing for 30-some years and we're only 29 years old.
I know. We're that good. So I took a little gamble this morning, and since we have so many other things in common about what kind of cake that you would have on your birthday, so I've got two here in front of me. What would be your two favorite cakes to celebrate with on your birthday?
I am not a chocolate guy, so I would have to go with like a cherry chip cake or probably just lame old yellow cake.
Oh. Well, I have a German chocolate. I have a German chocolate cake here in front of me and a cherry cheesecake.
Ooh, cherry cheesecake, go!
There you
yeah.
go. Happy birthday. Then.
Okay, we'll get you a fork.
Thanks.
We'll get you a fork, bud.
Airmail that one out.
Yeah.
You got it. It'll be fresh when it gets there.
Well, Derek, you get the rest of that chocolate cake all to yourself then.
Beauty.
Hey.
So just a little bit of background here on Koz, if you don't know him already, and I know a lot of you probably do. He's got a number of roles that he fills. Guide up in Michigan, a member of the Trout Unlimited chapter there in his area, the Miller Von Winkle chapter. Is that right? That's a mouthful.
Miller Van Winkle, yep. Two different guys, Hazen Miller and Rip Van Winkle, and we combine both their names together to make the Miller Van Winkle chapter.
So you guys are spinning gold up there, is that right?
No, Hazen Miller was actually a urologist from the Detroit area who vacationed up here in the 30s and the 40s, and he wrote a book called The Old Sable. So that's why they named the chapter after him.
Mm. You are also a greenfish ambassador and live up in northern Michigan, where I'm from as well. So we have a couple things here in common in terms of our support of organizations in conservation and where we were born and where we are from. So, again, happy birthday.
Thank you, you too.
How far north in Michigan do you live, Koz?
If you look at your hand, I'm not the index finger, but the ring finger just to the left.
Okay.
Boyne City is on the shores of Lake Charlevoix. And last year on the USA Today, .com news, we got runner-up lake of most beautiful lake of the U.S. right behind Lake Tahoe. Yeah.
Which hand would I be looking at, and would I be looking at the palm side or the back of my hand? I'm still a little...
I'd be looking at the non-hairy side of my left hand.
I saw Kirk checking out his knuckles going, wow, those look pretty sweet.
Right.
Kirk has hairy palms, so that doesn't help.
Les Grand Knuckles. Les Grand Tetons. That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like a beautiful area up there.
It is absolutely gorgeous. We're blessed with a lot of rivers and lakes. We can fly fish for lake trout in some of the lakes, walleye, smallmouth, pike, muskie, largemouth bass as well. Bluegills get fairly large, but I'm pretty much sticking to the moving water.
Nice. Any lake run steelhead or lake run rainbow trout?
Well, see, you guys have what we would genetically call the true steelhead.
Yeah.
We're not going to go there.
You heard it here first.
I'm not, because, if you catch a 12 to 15, 18-pound steely here on the Pier Marquette, you got your hands full, and I'm not going to say that it's not the same fish, or it is the same fish as a Pacific West Coast fish, but if our fish had the chance to dine the majority of its life on saltwater, crustaceans, shrimp, whatever, they might reach the 30-pound mark, and I don't think you're going to see a 30-pound steelhead. They do exist, but catching one on a fly rod in Michigan with all the wood, good luck.
Yeah.
I have nothing to say.
So you don't guide on...
It's a different game.
Yeah, you don't guide on all of those rivers you talked about, though, Kozrat. You're just... do you have one that you consider to be, your home, your special river, your home river?
Jordan River's right in my backyard. I'm 20 minutes away. The Boyne is 5 minutes. The Manistee, 40, 45 minutes. The Asable, less than an hour. So within an hour, I can be on a lot of prime water. You just don't. I had a client last year, let's go fish the Platte. Let's go fish the Platte. And it's over on the other side of Traverse City, and they don't realize that that's 2.5 hours for me, and I don't know the Platte. I don't fish the Platte. Yeah, but they get great salmon runs. I'm like, well, you want to go catch salmon, you can catch them anywhere you want to go. You just got to put it in front of them. So, no, I don't try to do everything in northern Michigan because I'd rather keep a good beat on the river that I know in my backyard.
Well, it sounds like you've got several to choose from.
Yes, and different years, different water events happening, melts, runoff, rain, whatever. The hatches are all different on every river just because of their sources can be, either spring-fed from aquifers or they're dammed up, so you're going to get a different cycle. You can plan it out and hit the hex hatch for almost 6 weeks from middle of June well into July if you do it right.
I was going to ask about that big yellow bird-sized mayfly hatch out there. Is it your top one for the year?
It is, and because you've got the opportunity to catch some of the biggest trout of the year, without a doubt, on a dry fly at night. They're absolutely gorgeous, kind of like fishing, the salmon fly hatch out west. They're eating so much that they just can't stop themselves. The hard part is you're doing it in the dark.
Here's your fork, eh?
Right? For most of the newer, I would say I'm blessed with the fact that I get a lot of first-time anglers in northern Michigan because we're kind of a resort community. A lot of people come up here from Detroit for their cottages or the weekend getaway at some resort, and they're like, hey, that fly fishing, that looks like fun. Let's go try that. So you get them in the boat, and you find out they've never picked up a rod before, or they don't know what rubber pants are. So they want to catch the big fish on the hex hatch. I'm like, okay, let's go do this.
Kirk's wearing rubber pants in the studio this morning. I told him the birthday party was going to get out of hand. So
don't judge until you've tried the rubber pants.
He brought his rubber pants.
What are the waters like, Koz, as far as floatability? Are they pretty tame waters? Do you have any kind of technical stuff there?
Technical, yes, as far as it can be really tight. There can be a lot of wood, LWD, large woody debris, we call, down cedars, down white pines, anything of that nature. We don't, a big river for us, for me, is the Asable, and that's way below Grayling and Mile. Once it's been dammed up 2 or 3 times, then it becomes a big river that you might be more comfortable with. But there's so much wood in our rivers that really 30 to 40 foot wide river, that's about average.
Wow.
So it does get technical, but it's not very
steep.
Often very fast. Yeah. No, we've got one river, the Sturgeon, that really cooks, and it's a very popular kayaking river, and it's probably one of the fastest velocities in the lower peninsula. And it's a straight shoot. So some of these guys, some of the rivers don't have the big meandering bends, and oxbows and all that kind of stuff. They're pretty much either east and west or north and south. There's not a whole lot of playing around.
Do a lot of people fish your rivers from pontoon boats and personal type watercraft, or do you see a lot of hard boats? I know you've got a canoe that's fairly famous on Facebook for its decorative appearance.
I have also a little one-man pontoon, and I use that more for stillwater fishing for some of the kettle lakes that are hard to access without, there's no boat access, and you got to carry in your gear. But the wind kind of spins you around when you get out there. My favorite boat, I just got the Adipose 2 years ago, and that boat was built for the rivers that I float. You know, the skiff has that lower bow, so I can see anything that's coming. And it's absolutely effortless for me to sit in the middle of a moving stream while somebody's focusing on a fish downstream or, stern or starboard. So it's a perfect boat for northern Michigan.
That's on oars, or is that powered?
Nope, no power. Just all on oars.
Cool.
Or the sticks.
Oars or sticks. I ran into Shelley at ISE this weekend, so she said to say hi. Happy birthday.
Excellent.
As well. So
we won't be bumping into each other, but I'm going to go to the Michigan show coming up in March, and they're sending somebody out. I have no idea who it is.
Is that the one in by Detroit?
Yep.
I might be there as well.
It's a pretty big show.
Yeah.
For the Midwest. I mean, for Little Michigan.
Yeah.
So I guess let's get into it, because we've got a lot of things to cover here. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about it, and I want to kind of weave together all the aspects of your life, the family, the conservation, guiding, how all those things work together, the long days, the glory part of the job, the tough parts of the job. We talked a little bit already about the types of river that you fish and where you prefer to fish, and all the water that's there. Michigan is famous for, I guess outside of New York, it's probably known as the birthplace of fly fishing here in North America. So let's talk about, just really quick, about access and about your guiding philosophy when it comes to showing people water. You've heard the concept of River X, the place that, it's none of your business where it is. People block out the background of where they caught a nice fish so that nobody knows where they went. But you do a lot of work trying to figure out where that is, trying to get the secrets out of people. So what's your philosophy, Kaz, on, that thought of have we exposed River X? Talk about it from a guiding perspective and how you balance those things out between getting people on the water, running a business, and conservation.
The best day for any guide is obviously the day when you get on the water, no problems, weather's cooperating, flows are excellent, bugs are hatching, clients on fish, and actually land a few. The hard days are when you're on that same stretch of water and it's either blown out or your client can't cast further than the oars and you can't get a fish to cooperate, and you're so frustrated because that's all you want them to do is get a little bit of fish slime on them and have a big smile with a fish in their hands. That's all that we want to do at the end of the day. But I'm not going to take somebody that I've met for the first time to some of my favorite, most treasured waters. They've got to earn that. If it was easy, then everybody would be doing it. Last fall, Labor Day weekend, I had a grandfather and a grandson. We were getting 30-mile-an-hour headwinds coming up the river. It was maybe 45 degrees, raining, crappy. At the end of the float, the grandfather was like, "No, I couldn't believe when you catch a fish all day." And the son's like, "Yeah, but we've never picked up a fly rod before." I'm like, "How would you expect to? You go to Myrtle Beach without ever testing out your clubs before you get there?" The analogy, and it blows me away that people think that. There's a couple of secret spots in northern Michigan that absolutely cannot handle the pressure of being popular or well noted. If they were, they could be decimated in a couple of seasons. But I also think, some of the old school guys that are, their damn Facebook, you're showing everybody all the spots where all the fish are. Like, they've been on the maps for 100 years, and I'm sure there was a guy before you who said the exact same thing to you, and somebody said that to his dad, 40 years ago. The rivers take care of themselves. you take care of it. You know, if you're so worried about somebody being in your honey hole, then don't talk about it. That's all there is to it. But you can't be mad at somebody if they show a picture of a fish if they can find it all on their own. I'm not giving anybody GPS coordinates, but you know, if they do the work and they bust through some brush and they find a good fishing spot, good for them.
It's a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit controversial because you'll get the guys that, from a guiding perspective, say, you know, all right, this is my job. You're paying me to put you on a fish, so I'm going to take you where I can guarantee you that that's going to happen, because they're motivated by one. That's the quality marks of a guide, is being able to put people on fish. But the other one is being able to explain why maybe they're not catching fish that day. So it is the controversy. I mean, pay to play, whether that be public water, private water, guide or non-guided. I mean, it's an issue, right?
I totally agree. But there's also one or two guides on a very popular river south of here that will pay locals to camp out on certain holes, so that if you get there before he does, you can't fish his holes. You know what? The river belongs to everybody. You know, whether you're there or not doesn't mean that you get to rope it off and secure it as yours. And I know it's all about putting a fish in the hand of the client, but teaching them how to respect the resource and getting out there more often. How many of you guys, everybody says, wow, you always catch big fish. I see pictures of you with big fish. I'm like, but I'm out there 200 more days a year than you are. I'm going to catch a big fish if I'm out there 200 times. You know what I'm saying? I'm paying attention to the river, and I see what's happening. I saw that fish last year when he was 18. This year he's 22, you know? It's paying attention to the resource at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, the access issue is, you know, whether you're talking about, you know, the guys that are putting skins on their skis and walking up the hill versus, the person that takes the chairlift off. You know, the whole concept of earning your turns is not just a fly fishing thing or a skiing thing. It's about access and about, you got to earn what you're looking for, and it's just not going to be given to you.
Exactly. I agree. And the beautiful thing about a river, on the flip side, is it changes every year. You know, from season to season, a washout, a beaver dam, fallen tree, all of a sudden somebody's honey hole. I had a guy call me up 2 years ago. Hey, somebody's been back in our favorite water, and they're cutting down trees, and they dropped them right in my favorite honey spot. I'm like, well, the property owner is working with the DNR and the CRA, and they're putting in that structure so that we don't lose the bank. And it's also creating a channel again, because it's just we have a sand issue in northern Michigan. We're just nothing but sand. And so I said to the gentleman, you know, I'm sorry you feel that way, but your hole is still there. It's just further downstream. You just got to find it, you know? You got to walk a little bit.
You got to walk a little bit, huh? Tell me about True North Trout. This is the name of your how we find you on the internet. Tell me that story. What's True North Trout, and how did you fall into that?
TrueNorthTrout.com and .net, which is, it's funny. We were going to move out to Colorado 3 years ago. My wife had a job offer in Greeley at Banner Medical. Now we had a house lined up in Lyons. We fell in love with the area, you know, fished the Thompson and the Blue, and we camped out in the middle of St. Vrain, blah, 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 blah. Our house didn't sell in Petoskey, so we turned the job down, and then a month later we got an offer on the house, and we ended up moving down to Boyne City. After that happened, the ironic thing that occurred, a gentleman met me at the F3T locally. It was either in Traverse City or in Boyne Falls, and he approached me and asked me if I wanted to take over True North Trout. And I said, let me think about that. And so a couple more emails later, he kept asking, here's how it goes, blah, 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 take the admin and do this and do that. And I said to my wife, you know, I don't write. I barely passed English 202 in college. I hated literature. I don't consider myself eloquent. Should I do this? And she said, yeah, you should, because it's going to give you more exposure. You're going to learn more about the area, and it's perfect for you. And that's exactly what he said as well. And so from then on, all of a sudden, you know, I don't try to be I'm never going to be Cameron. Met Cam from TFM, Fiberglass Manifesto. We fish together. He puts out an awesome job. That's not my 100% job. It's not his either. But I try to put out quality stuff, 45, 50 times a year, do a book review. I'm not going to be putting out fishing reports every week. They're hatching right now in this river or that river, but I try to keep it more conservation focused, doing a lot of work with the kids, family in the classroom, taking my kids on the river, that kind of thing.
So you've got blog content that goes along with that, right?
I'm sorry?
You have blog content that goes along with that as well? I mean, you do have an outlet for which,
Yes.
I had a client.
The .com.
Yeah, the .com part of it is the more active part of it?
Yes.
I had a client.
And I just roped in the .net as well, just because I already had an audience built up. Why would I try to guide underneath a different? I was doing chase and tail outfitters before True North Trout came along, and I was like, I've already got a built-up crowd with one. Might as well just continue and run with it.
I had a client ask me one time. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I had somebody ask me one time.
No, you go.
You go. Somebody asked me if I was a fishing guide that wrote or a writer that fished, because I have an outlet at which I do that as well. And
painting.
Painting. Yeah.
Right.
I also do painting.
Somebody said that the other day. You guys were like, we don't get into fly fishing because we have other venues that bring us into this.
Yeah.
You can't just be a one-trick pony in this industry. You won't make it.
Yeah, so I use my blog as as an outlet, as some perspective on it from a different I guess a different side of my brain. So it's a creative thing for me as well. I mean, creativity in writing or music or guiding. I mean, those are all things that are on your background as well. A love of music. Can sing along, can tap along on the desk, but you put me down in front of my acoustic guitar I've had for 12 years, and I couldn't even play you a G. But I'm working on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, Koz, you do write pretty good.
Or fairly well.
Probably gooder than Kirk at least.
Thank you, though, because you know what happens is whenever we're rowing down the river, or we're on the way to the river, or we're actually on the river waiting for the hatch, a whole bunch of thoughts are brewing in my mind. What can I do next? What can I improve upon? How can I take it to the next level? Am I doing enough? Am I doing good enough or gooder? You know what I'm saying? So I think in our sport, in our love of being on the river, there's that silent thing that happens inside of all of our heads that, you can't just go out there and flog a line out there and catch a fish. You're thinking about these things and letting a whole bunch of other stuff go all at the same time.
Yeah, it's a quieting of the mind.
So I would, it's a question you may have had before. I don't remember looking at and reading all the different places you've been interviewed and all those questions. And it's, when I think about the day that I'd like to spend with a person, dead or alive on the water, my dad really got me into the love of moving water, being on a boat, camping, all of that stuff. Having to swim the rapids before you could, go down it in a boat has kind of been a philosophy on how I've done things. And I've had my dad in the water and he's caught fish, and it's a full circle thing. It's showing somebody that you've learned what they taught you. And as a guy that comes in handy quite a bit, who would that person be on your boat that you'd most like to spend the day on the water with?
You caught me off guard with the dad thing. I lost my dad 3 years ago now, the week before opening trout season, and we never spent enough time on the river. So that would be definitely in my top 10 because, to have him see me where I am today would be a completely different turnaround from a decade ago. But, I think of the greats in our industry, like Yvon Chouinard, Craig Matthews, both of those guys combined, phenomenal what they've done for the resource, for, 1% for the planet, for West Yellowstone, $3 Bridge, all that good stuff. But, I got to pull Sean Connery out of the hat because I'm a big James Bond fan. I'd love to see what he could do with a fly rod on the river or fish over in some of his home waters. Who knows? And if my wife weren't around, I'd have to throw Scarlett Johansson in the mix just to go see what...
She must not be around then.
No, we got to see what she looks like in a nice pair of waders.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun to fish with Gary Busey.
Oh, yeah.
Get him in the front of the
There you
boat,
go.
Connery
Good
in the
point.
back. There you go.
I would put Daniel Craig in the back with Sean Connery. Just so I could have both
Suck it,
James
Trebek.
Bonds.
Suck it, Trebek.
I'll take squads for 1,000.
Just the way your mother likes it, Trebek.
Oh, that's good, Kirk, Evan. I've taken that down a pretty low level there, but I mean, insight is what I was looking for. So, Cos, thanks for sharing that. I like I said, I found that we have a lot in common, not only from origin, but also paths we've taken and things that are important to us, from conservation to family to the love of instruction and guiding. And you're a busy guy that prepares for Wednesday's trip on Tuesday morning. You're wanting to make sure that your next day with somebody on the water is going to show that you've put the effort in. So I appreciate everything. Yeah, I appreciate everything that you've done. You're certainly, as we move our way west with the guide stories, in the Midwest, I guess you include Michigan as part of. You're certainly a guy that's out there doing it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Here's a question to throw back at you guys.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. How did my name get pulled out of the hat? Who threw it in there? And what the hell? I mean, for real. For somebody like me sitting up here, we just bought a 3-acre section of land with a big red barn out back. We moved 4 days before Christmas. My whole life's been upside down. I get this email. I'm like, okay.
Actually, the big red barn was probably the reason why.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of stuff I need to store. You don't have to ask any questions about. Just let me bring
I've
it there.
got an implement shed off the side if you want to throw your boat over there as well. So we're doing good there.
No, I think it's as I was looking forward for the stories that I would want to hear, and I think people would want to hear. I've known you for a couple of years through Facebook, but the more I looked into the things that we have in common, it's just yours was a story that I wanted to hear, and that's the reason why.
Very cool. Very honored. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kirk. Evan.
That brings up that's a segue for the next point. What has Facebook done for the world of fly fishing and for connecting people like us? If it wasn't for Facebook, would Hank Patterson exist?
Yeah, Facebook's really interesting. I mean, it certainly unites a lot of people that would never come together, and it creates a sense of camaraderie. I mean, Kaz, you and I have been friends on Facebook for more than a couple of years, and we've had some one-on-one communication. I feel like I know you.
That's because we've gone to those 12-step meetings about all the stickers we have on our vehicles.
Yeah. I'm reformed.
I brought some stickers for you today, Kirk.
You're starting to relapse.
One sticker at a time. I'm rebuilding what I
brought some greenback sticker from Colorado
There we
with
go.
me, so you'll get some more.
But back to it, I mean, it is a real way of socializing. It's a new way of socializing, and I think that the world is a more interesting place because of the connections you can make, far and wide.
How does that apply to fishing?
Totally agree. Totally
How does
agree.
that apply to fishing?
Yeah.
I get to look at a lot of pictures of nice fish that I would never have a chance to catch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there drops in Facebook is like my ex-girlfriend who's posting all these great pictures of her new boyfriends at all the old places we used to hang out together. And I feel like that in the back, I'm sitting at home with the kids and all my buddies are out fishing the great water right now. And they caught that fish that I was looking at last year. Exactly. So I have that. It's a double-edged sword, definitely.
Facebook fish envy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I just use it to argue with strangers and look at pictures of cats.
Which you can do.
I look forward to the recipes and what you're eating tomorrow.
Yeah, I take pictures of my dinner.
The awkward Walmart photos that are done.
I particularly like the political discussions because those always end well.
Absolutely.
They tend to bring people together, don't they?
Yeah.
My life has been centered around the hospitality industry. I've been a bartender, server, manager for restaurants my whole life. And rule number one, we don't talk politics, and we don't talk sex, and we don't talk religion. So that's usually always gets in there somewhere, but
2 out of 3.
Right.
2 out of 3 I would go with.
So I generally avoid any of those discussions. I know, but even when we start talking about the whole football, Sherman, after the game interview, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it was cool. We all know.
Yeah, it's people have very, very strong opinions about certain things, and you're never going to win an argument when you're talking about a passionate issue.
Yes.
One good thing about fishing, we can all agree that fishing is good.
Yes.
Awkward silence.
Even when it's not.
Yeah.
Brian, how do our listeners find you not only tomorrow, but a year down the road, 5 years down the road? What's your website? How do they find you in terms of the guiding service and TU and all that?
The other funny thing with Facebook is I've met a lot of people on the river that I've never talked to on the phone or email, just through Facebook, instant messaging back and forth. Facebook is an excellent way. The blog is www.truenorthtrout.com, and the guide service is .net. So it's just truenorthtrout.net or .com. And I work at Cafe Sante, downtown Boyne City, on the beautiful shores of Lake Charlevoix. We do breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it's just one of those awesome little European cafes.
Nice. How far is that from Gobbler's Knob?
Pay the bills. From who?
How far is that from Gobbler's Knob?
The Gobbler's Knob part comes 2 miles exactly on the nose. We did some history on this house that we purchased, and it was built in the late 1800s, 1890, 1895. They don't know for sure. But at first it was a dance hall, and there was no bedrooms or anything in it. And then later it became a township hall. And then in the 50s, a couple transformed it into a home. So it was called Gobbler's Knob.
I think if I was going to tie a carp pattern, I would probably call it Gobbler's Knob on the nose.
There you go. I bet you Mr. Pitzer over at the Northern Angler would love to have a Gobbler's Knob.
I just trademarked that. Please do not copy it.
And we do know Derek is very excited about carp fishing.
A huge carp fisherman.
Yes, he's
so underground that you don't even know that I'm there.
Well, I bet that old place has got some stories it could tell you.
I haven't done the carp fishing yet.
No,
He was talking about your big red barn, I think.
The dance hall.
Yes, I'm sure that does as well. My wife wants to get goats, and I'm not keen on the goats. Chickens, I'm okay with.
They taste pretty good. I've had goat.
Yeah, goats taste good.
Yeah, make use of it.
That's a great streamside lunch. Just pull up to the bank and then
Grill some goat.
stick a lamb chop off of this skewer.
Yep. Whatever floats your goat, right, guys?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. We're just full of good ones today.
Yeah. Brian, cause anything else you want our listeners to know?
Anything else you want to ask us before this interview is over?
How are we going on the TU front, and we're intertwining the carp fishing into Trout Unlimited? Does that settle well?
Not speaking my language.
I guess I'll take a stab at that one. I think it feeds back into access, and it's there has been quite a push to get people with a flyer in their hand. I know a lot of guides. We're going to have a guide in a couple of weeks that she, a big part of what she does is catching carp out of canals that run through trailer parks. I mean, absolutely opposite of what the movie was. Wow. Opposite of what there's no boats involved. Again, it goes back to the access thing. So if people are using fly fishing as a mechanism in which to preserve access, no matter what they're chasing, so be it. Everybody doesn't have to participate in that type of a fishery, but as long as people are out there talking about and advocating for access, then that's what fly fishing brings all those things together. So I guess that would be my answer to it.
True. Good, Tom.
I agree.
Is there a Carp Unlimited?
There is not, and that's where, when I look at some of the older constituents that are, back from the day, we do cold water preservation. We're to preserve and restore and help the rivers. We started talking like that. We're not a carp organization. Well, in Michigan, we're pushing to try to get more charter boat anglers as members of TEU because they fish for salmon and lake trout and steelhead that are in Lake Michigan and Huron and whatnot. But is that really cold water? Well, it's colder water, but it's not cold water by definition.
Well, and
so you get a board of 12 guys in any, name any TU chapter, the greenbacks, and if 2 of them are charter boat captains, 2 of them are carp guys, 2 guys are brookie guys, and 2 guys are greenback guys, it's kind of hard to work on the same project or to get everybody in line with a focused direction. I see us spreading out instead of coming together.
Well, and that's what the organizations exist for, is to help align all of the energies and all of the things that are going on in each one of those spokes of the wheel. That's conservation organizations, in my opinion, have to be the hub of all of those things and allow for the wheel to spin with all these different, spokes that are things that bring back to the core of what are we really all fighting for, whether that's, access, whether it's wild fish, whether it's, just the continuation of the sport. That's conservation organizations are the hub. Chapters and groups and clubs and blogs and so forth, those are the spokes that help keep this thing moving forward. So
true.
Well, maybe the relationship is that carp in many areas are considered an invasive species, and maybe TU can help eradicate them.
Well, when we start talking about Asian carp, that's our other huge issue. In Chicago, we're 10 years behind the ball on this one, and they're starting to look at different ways of preventing this from happening before they enter the Great Lakes. They will decimate pretty much all of the fish populations.
And I think that's where, about the greenbacks is that's a fairly limber organization within a larger conservation organization, and that type of limberness is going to be required to, hey, there's an issue today, let's go start working on it tomorrow. So I think that's the future of conservation organizations, and as long as there's a strong hub to come back to, then that's not a bad thing. The key is going to be the people that are along that spoke, having credible, viable leaders that are doing those things and strong voices. So that's kind of what this show for me in terms of guide stories is helping to bring in, is that there are people out there doing these things. So
right.
Cool.
We're blessed in Northern Michigan to have a lot of people that donate a lot of money and they do a lot of work. We're missing out on some of the younger guys that have the muscle to get in the stream, start rolling rocks and doing the actual projects. Sometimes the conservation groups overlap. We've got so many between Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council, the CRA, Huron Pines, that all those monies from the benefactors are going to those groups instead of the TU chapters where you and me and 5 other guys can go out and we can actually plant some grass seed or, remove a beaver dam. And these watershed councils, they want to look at the whole watershed and let's come up with a 5-year plan and let's write up an analysis and let's do. And I understand the benefit in the 10-year outlook, but on the grassroots level, from TU's aspect, I can get a lot more done in my chapter that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Good insight.
All right. I think we're about ready to wrap this up.
Yeah, Brian, or Kaz, sorry. I kind of feel like calling you Kaz is a little bit more of like referring to somebody in the third person, so.
Right.
I know you have to that sense, you do have a reputation that precedes you, and you asked earlier about, again, why we want you on the show, and like I said, we share some stuff in common, so I thought that would be a nice way to kind of combine those guide stories. So thanks for showing up this morning. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Kaz.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me on. I'm very, very proud and very honored. I love it. Keep up the good work.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Yeah.
Tight lines. I won't see if Denver can show.
All right.
Have a
Goodbye.
good day, guys.
Thanks,
Yep.
Brian.
Take care.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great interview.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go to break here. When we come back, we're going to have the Utah Stream Access Coalition on the line to talk about stream access issues that are happening in Utah and a couple other places and how they can affect you, whether you live in that area or not. So we will be right back.
Allen Fly Fishing is your online source for everything you need to get on the water. From reels and rods to hooks, flies, and lines, save yourself some dough. Visit allenflyfishing.com today and take advantage of the deal of the week, where you can get an awesome discount every week on great products. Allen Fly Fishing also carries accessories and fly boxes, including their new guide fly cases made right here in the USA. Learn tips and techniques, get fly tying tutorials, and more right on the website. Guide and pro discounts are available, and they offer a thank you to all active, retired, and former military personnel with a special discount, too. Get it all at allenflyfishing.com today, or visit them on Facebook. Allen Fly Fishing is a proud sponsor of the Open Fly Podcast. Now back to the Open Fly.
And we're back. We have on the line the Utah Stream Access Coalition, Chris Olson, Brian Gregson, and Chris Barkey. Thankfully, the Chris's spell it differently, so that'll help keep our listeners less confused. So there you go. So why don't you guys, we'll start with Chris Olson. Why don't you introduce yourself and let us know what you do for the organization, and we'll go from there.
I'm a member of the board of directors of USEC, and I am currently the president of the coalition.
Great. Brian Gregson.
Yeah, I basically helped form the first group to fight the stream access groups along with Chris Barkey, and I'm not on the board, but I do help participate in anything that we might need.
Great. And Chris Barkey.
Howdy. I'm a board member.
All right. So we'll open this up to you guys kind of letting us know the story behind what's going on, and we'll work with that and kind of relate it to our listeners and their areas, and how they can get involved, or how they can bring this same kind of thing to their area.
Perfect.
All right. Take it away.
Barkey, you want to take this one?
Sure. Your question is how it affects other areas and how we can bring this to their areas, correct?
Yeah, just why somebody that lives a few states away should pay attention to what's going on with the Utah stream access issues.
Like I talked earlier before we came on the air, we were discussing why, and there's multitudes of reasons, but I would start first with the fact that people duplicate, people copy what others do as long as it's successful. And as long as the real estate world is successful at creating exclusivity on the natural resources of any state, they're going to try to go follow that. They're going to go try to see how they can make that same dollar, make that same money, make them more rich than they already are.
Right.
It's just a matter of how it's always worked.
Mm-hmm.
And
Derek,
they got to be, as citizens, they got to be diligent in knowing that to take away rights is pretty serious stuff for one guy to be able to do just by buying a piece of property.
Mm-hmm. And so let's expand on that a little bit, since we haven't really given a whole lot of background to our listeners yet. Kind of let us in on in Utah specifically, what are the groups that are trying to cut off access, and what exactly does it mean that they are limiting access to recreational users, to the public?
You've got the Farm Bureau, you've got all the private builders that are going to go out and develop. You've got one that's against one of our lawsuits is the Victory Ranch development above Jordanelle Reservoir. You've got several groups that are lobbying the capital, from the realtors all the way down to just, groups of property owners above Birch Creek Reservoir that have one teeny creek that wouldn't even be affected by this, but they're up there lobbying hard to protect that little piece of water that they use to bring in clients from out of state to impress and show, here's what you can own and you can exclusively use. So those are the groups that we have the biggest pushback against,
right,
from this perspective. So
the limited access from these groups includes navigating it or waiting. Even if they access from public land, they cannot walk through below the high water mark and still fish that.
Yeah, it's now. This is Chris Olson now. Yeah, how it is now. When they took away about nearly 3,000 miles of river from the public.
Just from the state of Utah.
Public water. Just in the state of Utah. Yeah, mind blowing. Did you know there's 3,000 miles of water in Utah?
I didn't know there was that much in the entire country.
Right, exactly. So that's what was taken away. So now these rivers where people had gone and learned to fish with their grandparents and time and time again, it's now criminal trespass if you wade in them, if you touch the bottom. I guess the wording they use is you can float through them, but you can't impede your downstream progress. So
you can't row.
Back row. You can't row adrift. You can't eddy out if you're in a kayak. You can't get out and scout your run, to see if there's a barbed wire fence going across the river, which happens. So,
how long ago was the law changed, taking away the access rights?
2010.
2008 was the first legislation to go through. Or the first
2010 was the first legislation.
2010.
Okay, so that was when that all started.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, in 2008 is when the Supreme Court decided that the easement has always existed since statehood. And so in 2009, the state attempted to bring HB 187 at the time, which was almost a perfect numbering of a bill. And it brought out fishermen in droves from all different corners of the state. And so that one was defeated because our legislature wasn't prepared for that many people. And then the next year, when there was cooperation between all the users, that's when we met with a bill that was drafted in the cave in the public's eye being left off of it, so nobody could see it. And it was brought into the legislation. Games were played legislatively to keep our bill that Lori Falk did in rules, and then they just did a whole showdown thing of, hey, let's bring them both out together and let's see who wins. After preaching private property rights for 2 months of the session.
Yeah.
So it was a very ugly product brought forth by our politicians to, dissuade us from fixing the problem that was made by the Supreme Court decision,
right.
And that was not defining the easement. The easement was always there. They just didn't define it. So,
So Kirk, you have you had some facts written down there. You're going to ask him.
Let me look for it.
All right. Well, we were talking about the legislation. I know recently there's been some new legislation that's been posted about online. What is it that's going on at this moment legally? And what's I know it's something going on here at the end of the month. And what is that?
Legally or legislatively?
Yes. I guess whichever one it is. I know there's something going on. I didn't fully read about it, so just kind of let us in on what I know. Here at the end of January, something is happening with this issue, and just a little information on what's going on there.
Yeah, Bart, you take it away.
The 27th of January, the session starts, and we have a bill, HB 37, that we're bringing that mirrors Idaho's law, and we've offered to drop our 2 lawsuits if indeed we are able to pass this legislation and see how it all works. It's worked in Idaho, so why wouldn't it work here? It does limit the scope of the easement clearly by saying that if it does not float this during ordinary high water, then it's not useful to the public. And here's the boundaries of the easement, which is the ordinary high water mark. Should be discernible by everybody.
So
should be able to.
In what other states is this similar situation going on? I know I've heard tales of Montana, a little out of Colorado, Idaho. What are some of the things that these other states are seeing that are similar? Because I've heard you guys also have your hands in some of that, too.
Well, the model that we're using for this the model that we're using for this legislation is based on Idaho law. It's something that's worked there since the 70s, and it's only been challenged once, and, during the 70s when this was going down, there was the same, contentious issue between private property and public rights, and, a lot of hoopla about whether or not this was going to work. And lo and behold, Idaho's, one of the great fly fishing states in the nation, and nobody questions that. So that's why we based that for this model. And then what was the
A big part of that, too, is that it doesn't mess with property rights. There's no title being taken by having to go say, hey, we're going to go prove to you that this is in the courts a navigable water. And then we're going to go take title from the property owner. And that's one of our lawsuits on the Weaver River. So therein lies the compromise. Limiting the scope of the easement is the compromise by saying not all waters of the state. And so legislatively, that turns into they've got to recognize that as something other than blackmail, like we've heard. So,
right.
Are there landowners that support what your coalition stands for? I mean, I have to assume that not every private landowner wants to be able to, control the water in front of their house, but there's got to be some people that are forward thinking and.
Sure. Yeah, there absolutely are. Yeah, there literally is more than I can count that are for it than are against it. The ones that are against it own guiding outfit operations or lease property from property owners for guiding, or it's that special interest again. It's not you're not seeing the farmer out there in the fields coming out saying, hey, you guys shouldn't be here. They know what they use their water for. They use it to grow.
Right.
And Derek, you had something to say there.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that commercial aspect of it, because when I think of a place like Utah, and I'm going to relate it back to something here in Washington as well, is the establishment of gene banks here, setting aside special water that has a specific purpose to push forward a whether it be a conservation idea or access, whatever it might be. When I think of Utah and fly fishing, I think one of the pictures that's been painted really well by the fly fishing industry has been the Green River. And that encompasses, a lot of the issues we're talking about. I mean, the pipeline between Flaming Gorge and Denver to supply water to the Front Range. Why is someplace? I mean, are we talking about an issue that for Utah? And again, I don't know that much about it. Is it up and down Utah's Front Range? I mean, is it the Front Range watersheds that? When we're talking about taking specific rivers like here in Washington.
I understand your question. It's statewide. There's waters from the Provo to the Weaver to the Sevier River to the Fremont River, ranging all the way down to, Escalante area, all the way over to St. George, all the way up to Logan, all the way over to Vernal. There's waters in between. The Green River is a navigable water. And so the guides that use that, we just met with them last week. It's now barely hitting home to them that all those little feeders to the Green River are what's affected for them. And, it's a broad scope of water.
Gotcha. Okay.
We haven't given Brian a chance to really say much yet, but Brian, being somebody that's not on the board of directors or an official officer representative of the organization, what is it that some of the other volunteers are able to get out and do? What are some of the things that somebody that's not, like I said, on that board can do to be effective in this? Did we lose him?
Brian?
It says he's still there. Well, how about either of you guys then?
The single most effective thing that any person can do is to communicate with the governor's office if they're a non-resident, or to communicate with their legislatures, and just open that door. We know that it's really intimidating. I mean, we've all been there. None of us are lobbyists. None of us came from a political background, and we know that it can be scary to go up there and talk to people and have that face-to-face conversation when you don't know all the answers that they might hit you with, but. When push comes to shove, just being able to convey that this is an issue that's important to you, that you want your children to be able to fish these rivers, that it's something that you're really looking out for, and that you hope that your senator or your representative will back you up in that, that's the main thing that people can do. And that's, we can only get so many people, we can only talk to so many people on our own, we can only get so many people involved. When we hear from our legislators that, oh yeah, I've heard this was the most talked about issue on the Hill, we know that the people's voice is being heard.
So who is kind of, in your mind, who's taking the lead from an industry standpoint or organizational standpoint? I mean, who is who's putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to this issue? Because Utah is one of those states where it's a large part of the economy there is based off of recreational fishing, and fly fishing in specific really benefits from that. So who do you see that you think is raising the flag for this issue, and who would you want to see raising the flag for this issue?
Wow.
That sounds like a hard question to answer, Derek.
Well, sometimes these problems require hard questions.
We've had a lot of donations from a lot of organizations in the standpoint of like, hey, here's some gear. Hey, here's whatever they could qualify as donating. The money side of it's been more from the individual, the private person. We don't have some membership fees.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess maybe to frame that question a bit more is that there are businesses, whether it be realtors, as you talked about earlier, or fly fishing guides and outfitters, that as commercial enterprises, they benefit from access. But at the same time, you're saying that it's some of those same organizations that are saying, that's mine, you can't use it, I'm going to benefit from this by myself. So do we, as I guess as a cadre of people that are out there using fly rods, do we start asking not only the primary organizations that benefit from fly fishing, but also the secondary and the tertiary? Do you start going out to the grocery?
Matched funds.
Yeah.
AFTA did some, they've done a good job at joining hands with us, and Brian keeping them in the loop, and them being, on our feed and know everything that comes out. And, Brian Bennett with Moldy Chum and Patagonia. I mean, there's been a lot of people that have kept the noise out there for us. Mm-hmm. And, to go and categorize and say so-and-so's done this and this and this, I think that harms what we're trying to do. And
yeah, I can see that.
I think that anybody and everybody can do more. Every single buddy, every fly shop, every manufacturer, every one of them could do more. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about that. Because, we haven't been a pounder of, hey, you've got to get us some money. It's just whatever you can do to help, Chris can.
Yeah, I mean, the question I was asking was, is it the grocery stores? Is it the gas stations? Is it the travel agencies? I mean, this is a wider message when we start talking about access and whose voice is being heard. Do we have to start reaching, the place you go to buy your food for and your ice for your float trip?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, those are all places that'll benefit from this increased access. Governor Herbert last year, there was a bill that went through that created this new Office of Outdoor Recreation in the state of Utah, and we presented this legislation to them in December to say, hey, look at these economic benefits. Look at the ski industry in Utah. It brings in $1.17 billion a year. Look at the fishing industry, just angling in Utah, and how that brought in $875 million a year. And this is that much money when half of the rivers are stripped from the public and it's not, advertised. Aside from the Green River, as you pointed out, it's not aggressively advertised to bring people here as a fly fishing capital of the world, like say Montana or Idaho. So there's a huge amount of economic growth that we could benefit from if we had this recreation infrastructure there. And so we presented that to them in December, and they were in favor of some sort of bill that would do that. And ours, I think, fits that category.
Let me play devil's advocate here for a minute. The access law, legislation, whatever it would be, is saying that if it's a navigable river, you can float through it. You can't stop and set foot on the stream bed. So
you can't back row either.
You can't back row, so just forward progress.
Right.
Somebody may argue and say, well, you can still fish plenty of rivers that way. I'm sure that argument comes up, in people defending their position. But while that may be true, that's not how you fish. And so education becomes paramount so that everybody understands the issue, not just fishermen. So how are you reaching out to the public at large to get their support for something that is a special interest within the fly fishing community?
Chris, that's a whole marketing thing right there. That's we've put aside some money for marketing, which I can let Chris explain. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're reaching out. Yeah, it is. It is. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But there's a couple key issues here, and that's what we've got a mass media campaign that we're about to launch on Friday in newsprint and on I want to say 15 TV stations or something like that throughout the state of Utah. But yeah, one of the aspects of that is people say, well, I don't fly fish, or I don't kayak. Why do I care? And the reason, one of the things that we've told people is you care because while you may not, your children might want to. While this might be a niche effort right here, right now, it's not an overall issue that can be marginalized, right? When you're having your public resource taken away from you and privatized, that's a bigger picture than just what's going on right now.
Yeah, I think that's the deal facing almost every conservation issue anywhere, is that it's specific small groups that tend to really take the voice of a cause, but yet everybody benefits from it. And getting the larger population to become less apathetic and to really care about something, that's really the challenge of most conservation issues, getting the support from people that don't know and may not care because of that.
Yeah.
Sure. And the biggest problem is that we've got a limited war chest, and there's a limited amount of money for the lawsuits. And so to go out and how we've almost looked at it as frivolous spending to get the people's attention on things other than the radio when we've done interviews or things like that, or even this podcast, for instance. How many people will lift a finger from that is always the question. And, hopefully the money we spend brings in some money, because otherwise we're blowing it, and we're going to have to make up some more for the lawsuits,
Right. Well, we're talking about that. How can people donate to your organization? Because this should be a call to action.
Yeah.
Well,
what's a website or something they could go to for that?
If people go to utahstreamaccess.org, there is a donate link at the top, and people can do that by either using PayPal or they can email a check to our treasurer.
I have some money in the Open Fly PayPal. I'll send a few bucks.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Sweet.
We'll put our money where our mouth is. Where Kirk's mouth is, at least.
The thing is, there's 400,000 licensed anglers in the state of Utah, right? And that's just within the state. And,
Jeez.
I mean, a dollar from every person, or the 3,300 members that we have of the Stream Access Coalition, how much does a fly, like a streamer cost? A Kelly Gal pattern, what, $6 at a fly shop?
Sure.
I mean,
Right.
a single call out from that, a donation from every person for just $6 is a huge amount of money. So,
if every fly
That's how
shop
people
across
can
this country, would just send $5, or donate 2 flies, or you could see how easy it would be. We've all had these thoughts, but our reach is only so far for the people that we know. And
well, the good thing is that every fly shop in the country is listening, or will be once this is downloaded or uploaded.
Yeah.
So,
this could hit their state tomorrow. I mean, all the people that are questioning access, this could come and play in their backyard.
And that was a big reason why we wanted to bring this on, because we know enough about these kind of issues to know that it could easily happen in our own backyard, and I think
Montana keeps on fighting.
Yeah. And it's a matter of educating people and making them aware that it's something that can happen, can make all the difference if it does show up.
and that's not just purely rhetoric either.
Right.
I mean, South Dakota last year, it was brought up to us by a friend of a friend that emailed it to us and said, "Hey, this bill, isn't this what you guys are fighting in Utah right now?" And we read through it, and we were like, "Holy smokes, this is exactly word for word, exactly the bill that we're fighting, word for word."
Wow.
So it's moving, and it will infect, and it will spread. This motion for the privatization of public resources. If there's not pushback from the public, there's not going to be anything left.
Well, I think
as a
that
board,
Oh, go ahead.
as a board, we've actually had to consider: do we want to go put money in the pockets of legislators? do we need to do? Is that the route we're going to have to go to compete with the farm bureaus and the realtors of the world? And we know we don't want to do that. We'd rather go buy a stretch of river and donate it to the public than go put money in a legislator's pocket.
Yeah, I mean, all politics is local. I mean, you're talking about, what's something that I can do? I can go put a politician in my boat and take them down the river and show them an experience and ask them if they think it's worth fighting for. That's a pretty effective way to do it.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
As long as they can cast.
They were on a walk and wade trip, and they were able to say, hey, look, you're wading in a water that could eventually be taken away to private interests. You wouldn't be able to come back here unless you paid for it. It's a tough price tag.
We'll just make sure we don't put any of them in my boat, because that could go poorly.
Yeah, lean left. That's the way to go.
Is the coalition, are you guys a 501 tax deductible?
So that we could...
Yeah, we're a 501c4. So that ends up being kind of...
So we could lobby.
Yeah.
Let's touch real quick on this is we're giving this our conservation spotlight today, and it's obviously an extremely important issue that is conservation related. But to expand on that, do you see any issues popping up from the limited access, eyes not on the water, where landowners are damaging the habitat and things of that nature, damaging habitat, pollution? Is anything like that starting to crop up now that it's no longer a publicly accessible resource?
That was happening before it was
5 years ago.
One at a time.
Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead, Barky. After you, sir.
It's been brought up since the beginning. We've mentioned exact kinds of cans by the Cenex pesticides. We've seen the cars to stop erosion put in the corners of streams that aren't really good for the water.
Yeah, the old broke down cars just parked down on the bank.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we've seen all the damage that takes place from cattle, from stomping and just clearing willows for miles down a stream bank because of grazing and not having those allotments and those permits, monitored very clearly by the Forest Service.
Yeah. And this is a side of things that I think a lot of people aren't going to think about. Think about, I can't access my river anymore, but there's a lot more going on than just that. While they're not looking, things are getting destroyed. Not
every private landowner is a steward.
No,
they claim to be the best stewards, but that's exactly the point. Is you can't have 100% batting average from everybody.
Yeah.
Well, and at the same time, nor is every angler that goes in the water as good of a steward as they could be as well. The fact that we've got to put
press that hard.
Yeah, we've got to put monofilament collection tubes at access areas on rivers so that people don't throw their trash in the river. That seems like a pretty easy decision to make, but yet we've got to provide the ability to do it, or else people are just lazy.
Right.
This is something we can't be lazy about.
They put pockets in waders for a reason.
Right. I never empty mine out. I think they're getting a little rough.
Right.
Yeah. So
thingamabobbers, foam, it doesn't matter. They have to have that education right at the start, right at the beginning. Littering. If your mom doesn't smack you for it, then you'll never stop.
What's the next first important date in your fight?
Well, the next date when things start, like Chris mentioned earlier, the legislative session begins on the 27th of January, and we're going to be there to help people, approach their legislators before things get too busy, and open those lines of communication so that they can follow up with them on the 11th of February, 9:45 a.m., Capitol South Steps, when we're going to have the biggest rally for stream access in the state of Utah that we've ever had.
Nice.
Wow. Cool.
How many people are you hoping to show up?
Oh, if we could get 1,000 people there to pack the steps and then fill the Capitol, I think that would be pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible impact.
Derek, do you have anything else to ask or add?
Yeah, we've talked very passionately about the things that are worth protecting. So paint just a quick picture of, and you don't have to name the stream, but tell us why preserving access in Utah is important to you. Your spot that you find your
happy
solace.
place.
Yeah, your happy place.
Go ahead, Chris.
How about you go first, Chris?
Let me start that off by saying that I'm born and raised in Idaho, and being able to walk up and down rivers and streams is something that's I've just understood. I mean, the rivers are highways for people, and when I moved down here for college, started fishing with a group of buddies down here, and I was absolutely blown away by the resources and how I could, either go skiing and then come down in the afternoon and go fish, or study hard all day and take a day off and go within, a relatively close area to Salt Lake City to some of these absolutely premier trout streams. I remember actually the last day that I stood on one of them was the 11th of December, 2010. And that was the day that HB 141 went into effect and the rivers were stripped from the public. And I know that river's changed. I know that with high flows, it changes every year, and the eddies and the back currents and the fish. And it pains me to know that there is so much public dollars that have gone into those fish and gone into that fishery to have it totally stripped away from the public. That's what I have to say.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, good answer.
It's a lot to say.
You studied in college, huh?
You went to a couple classes,
Yeah.
It sounds like.
On a couple. That's a couple.
All right. That was Chris Olson. Chris Barkey, do you have anything else to add? We're going to wrap this segment up here pretty soon.
Yeah, just it kind of mirrors what Chris is talking about. I just know that the first time I heard about people wanting to overturn the Supreme Court decision, I crawled my ass out of the stream beds and went to listen, and it just didn't sound right. It just didn't sound what I was used to dealing with. It didn't sound like all my friends and I, trekking around the state of Utah to find waters, I moved to Utah when I was 12. Once I could drive, it was on. I was gone for more days than I should have been, and Mom didn't know, so it was what doesn't harm her,
Right.
Just gone fishing, and now I have to go fight for that, so it's cut into the fishing time, and it's really astonishing how much you can lose in a matter of one legislative session on any topic, and that's where it's just opened my eyes very, very broad, and it's made me wonder, do I want to stay in Utah or do I want to go to Idaho? My friends have all moved on me, like Gregson and Chris Andelin, and they all the people that I fished with, and now it's just me, and I don't know if it's worth it anymore after this.
So, what does $10 do for you from a donation standpoint to the cause? What does 50 do? What does 100 do? Tell our listeners, the four of them that are out there. Tell them what $20 does.
It secures our ability to go fight this all the way to the Supreme Court if our legislature isn't smart enough to actually pass HB 37. Mm-hmm. If they want to continue with the will of the property owners that are demanding private property rights be the only topic and that the public property right of the easement itself should never have existed, then that's where we'll stand, and we have to go fight that in the legal system because what they're doing is unconstitutional.
And that money goes a surprisingly long ways. I mean, our attorneys are working entirely pro bono, but where it goes is court fees, transcription costs, paying for experts, depositions, these sorts of things. And those are just necessary costs of playing this game. And like I said, we're all volunteers here. So,
Chris is a medical student. I'm a glass shop owner, so we got a lot of diversity in our crowd.
Yeah. Well, to the audience out there that doesn't live in Utah, has never fished in Utah, imagine your own state facing these same, restrictions, and imagine the help you would like from outside. So if you don't live in Utah, it is your issue. So give them $5 or $10.
Yeah, and we're going to do that ourselves. We're going to lead by example.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, as well. So I think that's about it then. And I think we covered, it looks like we covered everything. And if you guys don't have anything else, we're going to wrap this up. Work for you guys?
Works for me. Bart,
All right.
anything?
Brian?
Yeah, I'm good.
No, Brian cut out a long time ago. He sent me a text a minute ago. Let me know
He's been out fishing.
he was in a bad service spot, which is why we got his voicemail when we first tried to call him earlier.
Hey, hopefully we can check back in with you guys in a few weeks and you'll have good news.
Yeah.
Hey, let's hope for that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks so much for coming on. Again, you guys can find them online at, was it utahstreamaccess.com?
.org.
utahstreamaccess.org. You can donate, and we're really encouraging our listeners to do so because this, if it was happening to your stream, you would want and need help from outside as well. So let's help them out. Let's help them get the public resources back. Guys, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah. And that's it. All right, guys. We'll hopefully talk to you in a couple weeks.
Thanks.
Thank
bye-bye.
you.
Yeah, bye.
That was cool. All right. That about wraps up that episode then. Anything else you guys have to say about that? Or?
Well, I think if you live in another state, you can't take this issue too lightly. For me personally, I was looking on the internet trying to find out just exactly what the laws on the books are pertaining to water rights in the state of Washington, and I couldn't find anything that spells it out. Generally, I've operated on the assumption that anything below the high water mark is public domain, but yet come to find out there are at least some rivers where that isn't the case. So don't assume.
Yeah, and I somebody I know recently, they were on a river in Southwest Washington and got run out of there by the landowner, and to their understanding, they had the rights, below the high water mark, and where this guy was, that wasn't the case, and he could have gotten in big trouble.
Yeah.
And it's one of the only rivers that's like that, but it does exist. So there's things you got to look out for.
What's that next date coming up? They said February what?
Oh no, it was January 27th is when the legislative
session opens.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's going to be right around when this show is going to post. So be within a few days. So you guys should jump on and see what you can do to help them.
Right on.
All right. That concludes episode 3 of the Open Fly. We'll be back in a couple weeks. I think our topic is invasive species. Sounds right?
Invasively so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So, all right. We'll see you all in a couple weeks. Thanks for tuning in. And you can find us online at www.theopenflypodcast.com and on Facebook and Twitter. And our website that I already mentioned. You can send us emails, questions, and all that we'd like to hear from you. So, all right. See you in a few weeks. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.